From the city of brotherly love, this is Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser.
You just arrived to the newest episode of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your glamorous host, David Strausser, and this is your place to grow a business during complete global chaos. As always, this episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsor and an SAP Global Platinum partner, Seidor. That's S-E-I-D-O-R. If your business is ready to move off of QuickBooks, give us a ring to help automate your business processes. Link is down below in the description as always. Now let's get back to today's episode. We're going to be chatting about acquiring talent in this very difficult to hire marketplace. So who do we have today? None other than Mr. Bert E. Miller. With over 25 years of leadership experience in the world of work, Bert E. Miller currently serves as CEO of Protis Global and Ace Talent Curators. Bert's expertise in search and recruitment dates back to 1995 when he co-founded Protis Global and MRI Network, member and award-winning search and recruitment firm specializing in the F&B, CPG, cannabis, and hospitality industries. Protis Global has built some of the most iconic brands in the CPG space and has consistently ranked in the top 10 of MRI Network offices over the last 15 years, generating over $75 million in permanent placement fees. In 2022, after serving as president and CEO of MRI Network for 3 years, it was announced that Bert would be stepping down after effectively scaling MRI's unique network model while supporting existing members. Bert is an active speaker, mentor, advisor, and investor. He hosts the MRI Network podcast and his new video podcast series, Beyond the Bottom Line, in which he interviews CEOs and leaders from across categories on issues impacting the world of work. What an intro. Speaks for itself, right? So, hey, I've got to shut up. Let's bring Bert right on in here.
Business strategy.
Bert, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
Absolutely. Well, it's better to be a shark than it is to be the bait. So I guess I'm on the losing end of this.
In a world full of sharks, it's better to eat than be eaten. That's why the show's called Shark Bite Biz. That's what came to my head. A lot of people think Shark Tank. Nope, it's not. It's because I have that shark mentality in business and just being aggressive and hustling. So anyways, we have a tradition on the show. Very first question, asked every single person, even the famous people. We asked them, and they're like, well, you know who I am. But I want everybody just to say it in their own words because it intrigues me how people talk about themselves and how they got to where they are. So if you could please tell us, who are you? What's your background? What's your experience? What do you do for a living? Basically, in a nutshell, what makes Bert?
Well, thank you, David, and I'm happy to be on Shark Bite, so I appreciate being here. I'm an Indiana boy. Grew up in northern Indiana, went to a university called Ball State University out of Muncie, Indiana. Came out of there, was recruited to go into the wine industry with the Gallo Winery. So my first job out of school was Gallo Winery. Spent 4 years doing that, and was a recruiter called me, and I took the person up on the opportunity to interview. And then went to Revlon North America with the cosmetic giant based out of New York City, and did that for about 7 years. Started raising kids. They started getting to the point where I wanted to coach and have some flexibility and be home instead of spend all my time in New York. So, David, at that point in time, I started what was called Protis Global. 27 years ago, this month actually, we started Protis Global and founded that. My co-founder was Laura Gonzalez, who's now my wife. And then the last 27 years, we've been a retained search firm in the consumer products arena. 3 years ago, we started a staffing firm called Ace Talent Curators, which runs a parallel sectors and disciplines. And then finally, 3 years ago, I acquired MRI Network, which is the franchisor for 230, 240 search firms around the world. And just recently sold that company to a public entity.
All right, right. Well, first off, congratulations on the big sale. That's got to be fun, right? Especially because sold it to a public entity. So that's, I mean, it's kind of cool because now your baby is, I assume it'd be in the stock market, being a public entity, right?
Yeah, it's on the NASDAQ.
Yeah, NASDAQ. That's pretty awesome. So congratulations with that. One of the things, and this has come up a few times in the show. So, sometimes you get the family business, whether it's brother and sister, brothers, father, son, father, daughter, husband, wife. In your case, you said that your co-founder is your spouse. Okay. How is that family dynamic of running a business together and also having to live together?
Yeah, well, it was much easier for me to compartmentalize than her. So we did have a lot of fun in the office. We were at opposite ends of the building, of course. She had what she led. I led what I led as we were building the firm. And then in 2008 or 2007 or 8, David, she decided she wanted to not retire, but get out of the business. And so it's, at this point in time, she spends time, doing what she does every day. And that's really taking care and keeping me sane, which is a big job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can imagine, it's very tough working for family, especially, some couples, while they may be the two brightest minds in business, they struggle with, like you said, you had to, put things in different departments and separate it all in order to make it work. And they kind of suffer with putting those boundaries as far as work versus home. And they carry that baggage home too. And they're usually the businesses that go up in flames eventually because they haven't been able to find that happy medium of work and home.
Well, we're blessed with a great relationship, thank God. And so she keeps me sane. She's the queen. And that's the key. That's the key to the entire thing. And you're right, David. I mean, the big thing is at the end of the day, there may be an issue at the office where I'm ready to go grab dinner, have a glass of wine or whatever. And perhaps she may want to talk about that issue over dinner, and I'm trying to keep it at work.
Totally get you. It's something that, like I said, it's common. We've had guests on this show that have given overwhelmingly positive experiences like you have, and we've had other that's like, yeah, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but it's been pretty tough for but yeah, no, glad to hear it. Love hearing how families make the business end up working and how they support each other, because I think it makes a relationship stronger if you're both working towards the same end goals. So that's just my hot take on it. But what I really wanted to talk to you about here is, we're in a weird situation right now where you have the Great Resignation going on. You can probably technically say that we're in a recession by the literal definition. You're in a weird marketplace. Now you have all the major tech companies laying people off. I mean, Amazon just a few days ago started doing layoffs. I think it was the first time ever they've done mass layoffs of this quantity. And you're in a weird market. A lot of businesses are still work from home. How do you manage, relationships with your boss, or if you're the boss, with your employees, to keep that bond strong so you can try to avoid either them joining the Great Resignation or, having to lay people off?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you hit on all of them, work from anywhere, tech companies that overhired and over-indexed toward the internet, actually. I think the acceleration of what happened with e-com during the pandemic, caused people to overhire. And so it's created a lot of dynamics, David, between what people tend to say the employee and the company. And I think going forward, both remote, work from anywhere, or in office, what's really, really important is that words matter, and we have to recognize that words matter and labels matter. And so moving away from the word employee. And, Protis Global, we talk about team members and we refer to people as individuals versus employees. And just those small, subtle dynamics. And there's a lot of things I can talk to you about relative to that. But those subtle dynamics and those words and that labeling starts to show people that, you do listen. They are people, and you're now connecting with people in a different way versus old school employee.
Right. You bring that up, and my father would probably get mad at me, but for a few years I did work and help his business. And, he kept referring to his employees, his team members as the help. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, it's 2004. You shouldn't do that anymore. Stop calling them the help. That's disrespectful. It's really minimizing them. And, at least use employees, minimal, or team, or, even myself. I don't view very often that I call my employees. I call them, my team members, my team, stuff like that. I find myself using that verbiage too, because even the word employee, it's kind of minimizing in a way. And if you think about it, like a lot of companies for, 10 plus years have started changing the way that they label, employees instead of, the word employee, what does Starbucks use for their employees? I can't think of it right now, but they don't,
They use associates,
right. Things like that. It's a word that is slowly, I think it's moving out of the common language, and it's usually only talked about in a formal sense anymore.
Well, I think what's really happened is, organically, we were shifting toward a different, what I would call work structure anyhow, David. What happened in 2020 in the last couple of years up until this point has really, really accelerated what was going to happen over the next 8 to 10 years. And
hold on a second. What happened in 2020?
I don't remember. I don't know. I don't know what people call that thing. I try not to say it. I try not to even say it.
You try not to say the C word. There you go.
Exactly. And, but the power has started to shift, and it shifted toward the individual from companies. And what's happening in the last 6 to 8 months is you're starting to see it shift a little bit back toward the companies. And I think we're at a really, really healthy balance ratio between the individuals and the companies. And I think the leaders that get it, and the ones that are very clear and bring clarity with their team members and the individuals and talent that's in their organizations, that they bring clarity to the mission and the North Star of an organization, and that demonstrate that engagement is the real currency, if you will, for lack of a better term, in the new world of work. For those that get that, they're going to have a distinct advantage versus those that still call people employees or the help. Or not only that, but in addition to that, not bringing people into the circle by showing them what the mission of the organization and drawing clarity, because people today want to be part of something, want to be a purpose.
I'm in the ERP business, and that's one thing that I did, and I think that I manage my region differently. I think others are starting to do it the same way now, but I think a lot of our competitors don't do this. And I kind of bridge the silos, because you always had sales living on an island over here, and then you have the people that have to implement it over here, and they don't really cross paths. They just know, this is my job. This is my job. Okay. And what I've done is try to bridge a gap, so that way team members on both sides, both of those islands, they all understand that we're working towards the same mutual goals, especially in our region, because we're in an organic growth region. We've had to grow this region from scratch, and it's been an uphill battle since day one. So as we hit different achievements, I'm making sure that they know, like, hey, every hour you bill, every dollar of software you sell, it's all adding up to this. And right now, I mean, we're at over 200% year over year growth. It's been amazing for us. But I think because I've bridged that gap and made them feel like they were a part of something, I'm getting 110% out of my team.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing it the right way, David, without question. And people always, I'm always asked a lot of times with your team, how do you motivate your team? How do you when your team is down or you miss a number, how do you motivate them? And I really, I'm always intrigued by that question, because I've always found that people who say they motivate are probably managers and not leaders. You can temporarily, motivate people. It feels a little forced and it's temporary, where leaders tend to get to know their team. They get to know their flock, if you will, and understand what is intrinsically motivating to an individual. And if you can understand that and engage and bring that out and inspire, or pull that, what I should say is bring that intrinsic motivation out that people have inside them, then now you are inspiring them. And when they're inspired, then they perform.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's been my experience 100%. I want to circle back because I did have a comment that I wanted to add in prior to what we just said. When you were talking about, I guess the power dynamic between employers and employees for that type of stuff, and the Great Resignation and how things are shifting, it's interesting, the site recruiter.com, I assume, right? And I've had Evan Sohn on the show, and he's the CEO. He also does the jobs report on CNBC every month. But he was on the show and he was telling us, and this is springtime, okay? He said our data and our analytics are all pointing towards the Great Resignation, because in that moment, spring, you were still in a employee dominant market to where they really got to dictate a lot of terms, salaries, all those things. He's like, that's going to shift going late summer at the earliest, probably over the fall. And I'm like, okay, let's see, and here we are. And exactly what he was saying out, and he said that this was based on, which surprised me. I didn't think recruiter.com was big into the business, intelligence and analytics like they were, but they're like, all this data that we have, this is what it's telling us. And to me, it seems like he was pretty right. It has shifted, just like you were saying.
Yeah, it really, at the peak for the individuals of I hate to use the word power, their position of strength was about a year ago right now. That was the optimum time to where they could really leverage their skills and scarcity, if you will, to move to other roles. As the calendar turned to 2022, people talk about, we're so into labeling on certain things. They call it the Great Resignation. I really didn't see it as a Great Resignation. I saw it as a Great Realignment.
Well, you had a lot of people that didn't want to quit because of COVID, for example. I said the C word, but they didn't want to quit because there was massive layoffs in the beginning. And those who stayed at their companies, they were afraid of jumping for a while, because who knows if grass is greener on the other side, and if that new company would be laying off because they overhired or whatever it may be. And those people really held on to those jobs longer than what they would have. And once things started, I guess, getting straight again, that's when a lot of those people jumped. That's why I feel that it was the Great Resignation, which may or may not be the point that you're coming to.
Yeah, well, I just call it the Great Realignment because people did resign, to your point. But I think, the media sometimes made it sound like all these millions of people are resigning and just saying, forget the workforce. And, you had boomers leaving the organization. You had boomers leaving and saying, we're tired of this. We're going to retire and move on.
Hashtag boomer.
Yeah, hashtag boomer. Yeah, I'm one of them. But anyhow, the reason I call it the Great Realignment, people did resign, but they went to other places, and they went to other places where leaders were engaged, where they were offering up the picture and clarity of what the mission is. And certainly, you had some of the talent, they overreached for roles and money. And you're starting to see a leveling today, a little bit of a leveling coming back where the ratio is not so disparate from each other. And now as it's coming back and leveling, some of those people that had an overreach probably are not in a really good spot, where others that, were able to, through data and through trends and through their skill set and being able to articulate what they could bring to an organization, they were moved up in the rankings by the employer, if you will. And as they were moved up, they got great roles, they got more money, and today they're in a good spot versus the people that ended up trying to leverage the marketplace and overreached.
As it pertains to the current market right now, how good or how bad is it? Because we are going through a time period where now you're having record tech layoffs. Okay. So tech is one sector, whether you're a dev or you QA, whatever it may be. I mean, look at everything that's happening with Twitter over the last few months, with a lot of people disappearing from the company. Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, I believe, has a hiring freeze. Not so sure what SAP is doing, which is weird because I mostly sell SAP and Sage. But a lot of the world's major tech companies, not even just major tech companies. I mean, you can go down a couple steps down there. They're doing it too. I mean, they're kind of, I guess you can say, right-sizing the organization because they hired up expecting X amount of growth, realizing that, hey, we're probably in a recession and, we don't know how long this will last. They're losing money and they've had to scale back down. So how many opportunities are there out there? Let's talk tech sector specifically, and then we can talk about the other sectors, apart, because I think they're in a different situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, historically, tech companies tend to overhire anyhow. I think they tremendously over-indexed, as they saw the pandemic and they saw the business that was being done, the commerce that was being done from the digital medium. And so, you were having bourbon delivered right to your front door. Now you have, ultimately the pandemic is basically ended, and we've normalized and we've learned to live with it, and we're back into what we are today, which seems to be more of a normal, it's new, but it's a normalized way of going about our daily business. Yeah. And now people are shopping back in stores. And I think people thought, I think a lot of these tech companies, they just really over-index to the e-commerce approach. And that requires engineers, that requires a whole different way of thinking, different departments. E-com is much different than retail. And there's a whole different dynamic by how you do that. And as they ramped up, that certainly has come into play because the consumer is now speaking a different language. And then when you add to the fact that further into tech, whether it be tech sales and otherwise, when you start to see a blip, tech is one of the first places to hold. You have CEOs of companies that say, that software project of $20 million project we were undertaking, let's put that on hold for a bit. And what happens is now there's no place for the salespeople to go sell tech, and now you're starting to see the layoffs happen.
Tech and marketing, I would put them in the same boat. I mean, both tech and marketing are usually the first ones that they get a hold put on. Luckily, I would say we have not seen a lot of people stop projects. Most people are continuing their projects with us. I mean, we're small to mid-sized market ERP solutions. So we have not seen people stop projects, but we do have some customers that are kind of like, hey, we just want to wait and see. We can afford the project, but we just want to wait and see where the market goes, because maybe they're predicting that they need, 80 users right now. But if they end up having to shrink, 6 months, 9 months from now, they may only need 30 or 40 users, depending on what happens with the business. So they'd rather just wait and see instead of buying something, it would be over purchasing at that moment. And then you're kind of stuck with those licenses until renewal. So we do get, but still though, I would say that's less than 10-15% of overall opportunities, or that wait and see approach. Does that add up with what you're seeing?
It's a little deeper in other areas, particularly the larger companies in tech. Absolutely. I found it fascinating what you said, though. The cuts in tech and marketing. You're absolutely right, and I'm always amazed about the herd mentality of leaders and corporate America and others. Especially around marketing, because the time to invest in marketing, the time to get after marketing is right now, when everybody's cutting marketing, because that's the first reaction to many of these CEOs. We're going to cut back on marketing, and what an opportunity to capture market share and grab. And
and it's cheaper. It's cheaper because the ad rates are lower because everybody's getting out.
Yeah, but what a time! What a time to let people know who you are and get creative and create content, and really dial it in for your brand, whether it be personal brands or hiring brands. Certainly marketing is a place that I'm shocked by how many people cut back marketing. And look, for me, David, if you give me a really great marketing person and give me a great salesperson, the great marketing person is going to win 100% of the time.
I would say, it's the time to market big, get the opportunities at the door, because you're getting all these opportunities. I view right now, if you're marketing, again, I'll use my industry as, the example, just because it's easiest for me to speak for, but we can get leads in our door at a fraction of the cost of what it was 6 months ago. Okay. Maybe it's 10% cheaper. Maybe it's 40% cheaper. I don't know. I'm not in the marketing department, so I don't see those analytics, but we are able to get it at a cheaper rate than what we were before. Our cost per client acquisition is going to be down. So it kind of makes sense. Like, hey, if everybody's pulling back, we should be throwing more in, because we know that our competitors are pulling back. And I can tell you, people are pulling back because, the show is obviously monetized on YouTube. Thank you, all my fans. But advertising revenue over the last 3 months has gone down the tank. I mean, views, watches, retention time, US based, all that stuff, pretty much the same. It's, a little up, down, but there's no peaks or valleys or anything. It's pretty consistent, and maintaining the same audience with slow growth. That's how it's always been. And that's probably how it will be for the foreseeable future. But still, the advertising revenue that we're getting is probably about 20% of what I was getting just as far back as May and June. It's insane.
Yeah. And by the way, to your listeners, this is coming from a sales guy saying the marketing is the place where you need to put your money. Absolutely. Look, it's interesting right now, David, because of what you're talking about. I keep when I have the opportunity to talk to leaders and they're asking me about, what are we doing? What should we do? I always go, if they were a leader in 2002, 3, during that, after 01, in that recession, and of course the bubble burst in 08, and then even in 2020. But look back and say, what would I have done differently in 08, 09? What would I have done differently if I knew we were going to bounce back the way we did? What would I have done in 03, 04 if I knew we were going to bounce back the way we did in 5, 6, and 7? What would I have done in 2020 when by mid 21 the business? You look backwards and say, if I would have done that, we would have been in a much better position. And most leaders would have, number one, not cut marketing. They would continue to invest. They would continue to hire top talent, not in an unresponsible way, but continue to interview and hire top talent. Well, if that's your regret, don't do it again.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. A lot of people make the same mistakes. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes during the Great Recession, but I was also, I got to do the math. 2008, compared to 2022. So what's that? 14 years ago. It was 14. It was 25-ish. But I had a family, stuff like that. And, I made some mistakes that was just kind of out of inexperience. And, I got very scrappy for a while, just trying to find work to be able to pay the bills. It was very hard. But coming out of that, to be honest, I lost everything. It was basically top of the world, bottom of the world, back to top of the world, but a lot slower. Took me a couple of years to get back to where I was. But I made the promise of myself, like, I am never going to be in that situation again. And I also realized at that time, the marketplace for being an employee searching for work, it used to be I could go out, get a job because of the experience I had, the track record I had. And, even being young, I had a really good track record. I mean, I've been working in sales since I was 14. I had a really, really good track record and, proven experience. And for the lower to mid-level sales, I mean, it's a no-brainer. But during the Great Recession, things started changing. Employers were able to have their cake and eat it too, because they were looking for people that not just had the experience like I had, but also college degrees. And it really changed the hiring landscape for positions that prior to that I was able to get. Then that happened, and it's like, oh crap, this job that I could have applied for 2 years ago, I can't anymore because I don't have a college degree. So I ended up having to bite the bullet and go to college later in my life. And, I'm grateful that it did. It came at an enormous expense, obviously, with the college tuition I'm still paying, but it's worth it because it paid for it plentyfold. And it's one of the things that helps me personally guarantee myself, guarantee my family that I will never be in that position again that we were at during the Great Recession. I recession-proofed my career, I believe.
No, that's fantastic. And it's interesting you talk about the educational aspect, David, because I think your listeners that are hiring leaders out there, what I look for in talent, I just look for, I don't look for experience. I look for experiences. I look back at people's experiences because, and it can be multifaceted and learn how they made their decisions. And if somebody's smart and they have cognitive intelligence and they're diligent, and they're responsible, and they have quality experiences, not just experience, and they're going to be a great fit in an organization, we can train them the rest. And I think for hiring leaders, I think we get too caught up in what's on the resume. We get too caught up in what that experience, past experience is. Will that be able to translate over here? And we need to spend time on the people that you're hiring and what they can bring to the organization versus just experience on a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And here, since you found that interesting, I'll go further into that story. Just that I was 16. I was making like about 30,000 a year. So much money that in rural Pennsylvania at the time, coal country Pennsylvania, that my mom actually started charging me rent. And then I'm 17, making 40,000, 18, about 45,000 I made that year. And I'm thinking, why do I need college? Year over year doing sales, I'm making more and more money. So I ended up moving to Tijuana when I was 18, 2 months after September 11th, started crossing the border every day, working in San Diego. And, I was making $40,000, $50,000 a year. And in Mexico, that money went a long way for me. So it worked out for numbers a year, then eventually got up to where it was over six figures. And then that's when the crash happened. And, once that happened, it was kind of like everybody kept getting stuck up in the, oh, you need this academic piece of paper. I don't care that you sold, millions of dollars worth of stuff throughout your career, that, this freshly minted college kid has, literally no experience in the real world, that you've been doing it for 8 years at this point. But, it was a hard time, like to me, it didn't make sense, because I kind of viewed it that I was making the right choices going forward, like I was making the money. It was kind of like, why go to college? What's that going to do for me? And then in my early 20s, when I'm already like sales manager type role and stuff it's like, what, go to college and learn what I already did? I mean, seriously, I ended up when I bought the bullet to go to college and do it. I mean, I ended up with, I don't know, a 3.9 GPA because I already pretty much knew almost everything they taught me. The only area I struggled was the advanced math, like pre-calc and stuff like that, because I am not a math person. But everywhere else, I mean, it was just straight A's. It was like kind of wasted, but that piece of paper people view as so important that it's like, okay, I'll spend the 60 grand to get that piece of paper so people hire me and take me seriously. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think times are changing. I think leaders are getting more and more open to people with the right experiences and not just the experience. And the other thing, yeah, I really do. And the other thing is, as we look at 23 and people are, there's cutbacks going to tech and people are asking a lot of questions. I would also share with hiring leaders, prepare your team and get them in a position in the right mindset to not think about what 23 and how everybody's talking about the doom and gloom. Get your team in the right mindset and get them prepared to attack 2023, knowing that some of the hurdles that we will have to go over may be a little higher, knowing some walls that we have to go through may be a little thicker. But nonetheless, if you prepare your team for that, then you will come out the other end better than perhaps you were when you went in.
Definitely. So let's pivot one last topic here before we wrap up. And that's going to be the relationship again between managers and their team members. And we brushed on this a little bit earlier on in the show, but I'm reading a lot of articles where people are like, oh, there's a time zone bias in my company, or, oh, like I'm being overlooked because I don't work in the office and I'm far away from everybody. How can team members, build the relationships they need to virtually? And also, how can managers, kind of being the referee there, make sure that the employees are building relationships with other people outside the manager, but also, build relationships with their remote team members?
Yeah, well, there needs to be a regular cadence of communication and expectations. There needs to be ways that your people that may be decentralized and working in other parts of the country and not directly in the office. Certainly, whether it be providing, certain amenities that one has, in the office, provide that in a remote setting. Would that be offering up gift cards or setting up people in wellness programs, making them feel part, and then having a cadence of communication so they do feel part of the organization. You can do that. And for the folks that do that, they will find themselves to be more successful than those that do not. The reality is, and this is maybe controversial a bit, but the reality is, well, I just believe if somebody is in the office and they're working and they're collaborating and you're there and you have a person that's in Chicago and they're working remotely, they may be similar talent as yourself. If we're all going to be really, really honest, most of the time, and 9 times out of 10, if it's an even fight, the person that's local is going to win that promotion. I mean, it's the way it is. And I know I have folks that would argue that point and take a different point of view. And I think that's wise to do, because I think a different point of view helps those folks that are decentralized. But I think the bias and the fact that we as humans, we see what's in front of us, and I don't want to say out of sight, out of mind, but the people in the office every day are in the office every single day, and they, in my mind, do have a bit of a leg up over those that are not.
Since the Great Recession, I have always worked remote. Even now, the region I took over for my company, this Northeast region, every single team member is remote, and none of them, work in the office. There is no office. I mean, it's been remote since before I became the general manager. So that, and with me always being remote, even when I worked with this company, I've been with them for 7 years now. So 3 years I spent sales rep. I was working remote out of LA with the headquarters down in Irvine. But then I have 4 years that I worked for them in the Northeast running the whole region. And it's been always remote. And, I don't know. I just kind of treat everybody equal. There's some people I see more in person than others just because of their sales reps, opportunities, events, whatever it may be. But, I don't know, maybe just because I've always worked remote for the last 14 years, maybe that just equips me to be able to handle that better than other managers where it's newer. I don't know. It just seems, to me, it doesn't seem like rocket science. And I don't get how people are struggling or how they favor, I judge people off of production. I don't care. I mean, hopefully HR is not listening, but I don't care if someone works 40 hours a week. I care if they hit their metrics, whether it's sales, whether it's billing metrics, support metrics, sales metrics, whatever it is. As long as they're hitting those metrics, that's what I'm judging them off of. That's how I'm determining if they're getting a promotion or not. And the feedback that I get from the clients, like, oh my God, it was so wonderful to work with Jot. Like, he has been amazing. He really helped us get us over the finish. Those are the things that stick with me. And again, someone else could be my next door neighbor. That's one of our team members, but that doesn't mean that person's going to get the promotion. Am I an outlier with that?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I mean, the reality is, by the way, I agree. I think outcomes are the most important thing. So that's my position on it. I will say that if you go across where we are today and the leaders running companies across the U.S., I do think there is bias toward people that they're in the building with and collaboration, and it could even be unconscious bias. And I'm probably guilty of that myself, but I do believe that people can be productive, in a work from anywhere environment.
It's because you do know, and it is, there is a bias. I mean, as much as I am pro productivity, I mean, let's face it, if you're in the office, you're in the same room, you get those water cooler conversations, stuff like that you just don't get as often with virtual team members. Now, me, on the other hand, I'll hit up my whole team, like, hey, are you in a call? No? Okay, you want to talk about guitars? Talk about video games, whatever they like. Like, I'll hit them up and let's talk for 15 minutes, take a break and let's just chat. So I make it a habit of mine of just having those water cooler type conversations with everybody that's on my team, whether or not, like, I don't look at that in the beginning of the meeting, end of the meeting, chat. That happens, but I go out of my way to make sure that I have those touch points with our team members, as frequent as I can. Some get a little bit more love than others just because day-to-day routine, who I've got to work with more, but I try to do it as fair and as much as I can with everybody. Is that a good way of managing that situation?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love when I get a guest that agrees with me. Thank you, Bert.
Well, yeah, it's good. It's good to be right. I think what you're doing and what I heard you say is you're getting to know your people, and you're getting to know your people on an individual basis. And so as you get to know your people on an individual basis, because they each are different, you're connecting and engaging with them at a level that's right for that individual. And when you're able to do that, the collective is now a group of strength, or a flock of strength, a team of strength.
I know what drives them. I know what motivates them. I know what their passions are. And then, it's kind of like, let's just bring this group together and just kick butt. I mean, that's where it is. But hey, Bert, I got to call out one thing. You are probably the first Bert I've ever met outside of my grandfather, who was named Bert. So his name is actually Bertram. I don't know if if you're just Bert or Bertram.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I moved to Miami, people are asking, "Hey, man, what's your name?" And I go, "Bert." They go, "Like Albert, Robert, Bertram?" I said, "It's Bert." And I had more people look me in the eye and go, "It's just Bert." I go, "Just Bert."
We get that with, my grandfather was Bertram, which is not a common name these days, I believe. But my daughter, her name is Liv, and that's because I met my wife at an Aerosmith concert, diehard Aerosmith fans. And
Oh, you're talking about the nightclub in Miami. I thought you were talking about the nightclub at the Fontainebleau, Liv.
no. I met her in Lima at Aerosmith's first concert in Lima, Peru. But so we my daughter was born premature, like 29 weeks, I think it was, or 27, something like that, like really, really premature. So we named her Liv for two reasons. One, Liv, as in life and stuff like that, but it's Liv, just Liv. We named her that because of that being born premature, but also because Steven Tyler's daughter is Liv Tyler. So that's where we thought we'd kind of honor how we met with the relationship by naming her Liv. And with having a name, Liv, first off, she loved it because in kindergarten, she only had to learn 3 letters for her name. But everybody keeps calling her, "Okay, Olivia." And it's like, no, I'm Liv, not Olivia. So she goes through that.
They named the golf tour out of Dubai after me, right? That's what she says now.
Yeah. That's what she's got to say. I'm named after the golf tour. My dad was a big golfer. That's funny. But anyways, Bert, hey, this has been a fascinating chat. Like, we went through a lot of different topics. I love hearing your expertise, your comments, and all these different stories, especially how it relates to my personal story, because I think a lot of people relate with me more or less, like how their careers have gone that listen to the show. So please do me a favor. Where can people reach out to you? Where can they find out more about you, about your company? What do you want to promote?
Go to LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time. LinkedIn, that's Bert Miller on LinkedIn. I'm at Bert Miller, Bert Miller at MRI on Instagram. I spend a lot of time on Instagram as well. And then, of course, Bert Miller on Facebook and Bert Miller MRI on Twitter. So that's where I spend my time. Please reach out to me. I'll answer any questions that people might have. And I've enjoyed my time. So I appreciate you having me, David.
Oh, no, thank you. I will. And everybody out there, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on iTunes, Spotify, or all those other 50 million podcast sites, as always, look down in the description right below the episode blurb. The very first link you're going to see is a link out to Bert's site. So, Bert, thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing, my friend.
Thank you very much, David. Have a good weekend.
You too. Cheers. Wow, that was an incredible chat with Bert, right? I totally love that. Bert, you are amazing, my friend. First, you all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it sparked those warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help us out, because Shark Bite Biz is the greatest kept secret in the world of small business, please share us out to your friends, your family, your colleagues, anywhere that you dwell on the interwebs, whether it's Minds, Facebook, Twitter, Mastodon, wherever you are, share us out, because we only grow because people like you share our clips and share our episodes. Now let's get back to the real rock star of this show, Mr. Bert E. Miller. That was an overall great conversation with Bert. I love these because I've said it a million times in the show. Whenever we have those conversations that kind of traverse over a number of topics, it's just something that I love because it's almost like a master class in one quick interview. And, I really love the couple things out of this interview that I want to point out. One of them being when we were talking about the work structure shifting, to even use of the word employees can sometimes make your team feel diminished. Why? Well, because they feel, I'm just clocking in, clocking out, instead of being really brought together as a team and being one of your team members. It's a great difference, especially with younger people or cranky people, I guess you could say, feeling like a valuable team member is a much more valuable term to use with them instead of using words like, hey, yeah, you're just an employee. I mean, that's a technical term. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But when you're talking with them, my suggestion, use words that are more embracing, like team member, make them feel like they're part of something bigger. Now, another part that I really loved is when Bert challenged the thinking of the quote unquote Great Resignation. And what he calls it is the Great Realignment. And that's where people moved positions because maybe where they're at, it was like an ivory tower syndrome, looking down upon people and all their little minions and stuff like that. And it's oftentimes people left because they went to a company that the leaders, the executives, the management at that team were more engaged with the employees, offering a very clear picture as far as what the mission is and what their role in that mission is so that they can hit their goals together, as I said, like just a minute ago, as a team member. I think that's critical, not working in silos and bringing people together and having a place where their voices can be heard and they are empowered to make moves. I mean, if you're hiring people at a professional level, I'm not talking about someone that their job is like a cashier of Burger King, but when you're talking about business professionals, you're hiring those people because they should be one of the best people you can get for a professional role. And you really need to be able to empower and trust them to make the right decisions. Now, they're going to fail. There's going to be some hiccups. But the only way that you learn is by failing. If someone only has success, they've been extremely, extremely lucky. You have to have those small minor setbacks like, oops, I just messed up. And from that, you learn and you grow. And that way you don't do it again. Now, if they don't learn and grow, that's an issue. And I think that's where Bert was kind of making his excellent point right there, to where some of the layoffs that we're seeing right now is kind of what he called a leveling off, okay, of people that really overreached. And I guess in some cases you can say overemployed, meaning that they took a position that they weren't ready for. And it might not exactly be their fault. What we saw during the Great Resignation, or as Bert said, the Great Realignment, was that you'd have major big companies, okay, Microsoft and companies like that, or Microsoft partners, in the ERP world, like we are, SAP partners. With the large enterprise products, they could not find employees to fill those roles. So what they did was they went downstream. And that's where they're finding out now, not all those people are able to be brought up to speed in those types of roles. And that's what he's talking about, everything kind of leveling out right now. And, pay, abilities, all those things are starting to get more normalized as we go forward. So anyways, awesome stuff, Bert. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your expertise, and please check out his business, Protis Global. And don't forget his awesome podcast, Beyond the Bottom Line. As always, links will be down below. Question of the day: was the Great Resignation the Great Realignment, as Bert said? What's your thoughts on that? Leave a comment down below on YouTube. If you want to be on the show, please shoot an email out to interviews@sharkbitebiz.com. If you're watching on YouTube, join the channel. $3 a month. You support us. You get to be a baby shark, or hit the heart and the $ button on the video and do a super thanks, $1 or $20, whatever you can. It helps us promote this, get the word out so that people can experience the 3 G's: personal growth, professional growth, and business growth. Also, again, another shout out to our SAP Platinum level partner, Sador. Get your business off QuickBooks, move to the next level, automate your processes. Check us out at Sador.com. That's SEIDOR.com, or just shoot me an email. Okay? You all know this by now, but I'll tell you again. I'm David Strausser, and this is Shark Bite Biz, and we'll see you all next episode. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.